Hi, welcome to my channel. I've decided to leave my series on my piano quintet for a moment and present a new series dedicated to orchestration, which is indeed an integral part of the composition process, at least when writing music to be performed by live musicians. One of the problems with learning orchestration is that most orchestration books are actually books on instrumentation. In other words, books that describe the characteristics of the instruments, but don't explain how to actually use them to write a piece for orchestra. I want to address this problem by presenting my solutions to the orchestration of short pieces by various composers. These videos will be different from my previous orchestration videos, in that you'll be able to see me do the job itself. I'll show you the original pieces and discuss various details that need to be taken into account when orchestrating them, and then I'll show you the process of writing versions of those pieces for a full orchestra or sections of an orchestra. To really benefit from these videos, I must warn you that it's necessary to have a solid musical knowledge, as well as knowledge about the technical possibilities of the different instruments in an orchestra. However, if that's not your case, I still think these videos might be interesting to watch anyway. We'll go step by step. First, let's start with the strings section, which is the easiest to tackle. The piece that I want to propose to you is the Menuetto of the Sonata No. 7 by Beethoven. Not all of it, just the first section. We'll do this in 3 videos. In this first video, I'll show you a neat trick to make the process much easier. Then, in the second video, I'll do a basic orchestration of the piece. Finally, in the third, I'll show you a more advanced solution. Let's begin. Here's the score. It's just 1 page. This is my own transcription, by the way. I have deliberately replaced the sforzandos with accents because, despite the controversy surrounding the difference between them, to me, they produce the same result. Other than that, it's the same score. Now, if you've taken harmony lessons, you know that in Beethoven's time, it was quite standard to write 4 harmonic voices in polyphonic music, and indeed, Beethoven has done so in the first 8 measures. At measure 8, we run into our first problem. Suddenly, we have 3 voices. The explanation is that the piano has only 1 key per note, so unisons cannot be played even if they are written. Beethoven has simply omitted the unison between voices 3 and 4, but since the chord in the first beat is A major, it's obvious that both voices should coincide on the note A. From measures 9 to 13, we find the second problem. We still have 2 voices on the upper staff, but Beethoven now writes block harmony on the lower staff. We can extract 1 voice from it, the bass, but the other notes simply express the harmony. There's no voice leading between them. The first 2 beats of measure 14 have 3 voices, while the third has 4. Then, in measures 15 and 16, we have 5. This is crazy. But is it? The thing is that in a solo piano piece, a composer doesn't have to be very strict about voice leading. The number of voices can change from 1 beat to the next, and no one would notice. It's even possible to avoid the resolution of the leading tone to the tonic in the same voice, as we'll see later. However, these things will not produce a good result in an orchestral arrangement. We need to clean up the original version, so to speak, and come up with something more consistent with the leading voice rules in tonal music, because good voice leading is crucial in an orchestral arrangement. In fact, one thing I ask my students, it's not to orchestrate from the original score, but to produce an intermediate score and orchestrate from it. I call this score a vocal score. The idea is to write as few voices as possible to produce the same result as the original piece, and to do so by following voice leading conventions. Let's create the vocal score for this piece. In this case, I recommend using only 4 staves. Any extra voice can be written on the same staff as another. Beethoven has solved the problem for us in the first 8 measures, so we only have to transcribe the notes. At measure 8, we write a unison between voices 3 and 4, and then, from measures 9 to 13, we copy the voices on the right hand, and for the bass, we use the lowest note of each chord on the left hand. So far so good. Now we must fill in the missing voice, and for that we look at the harmony. The chord in measure 9 is E minor. We could repeat the fundamental, but since the 5th will disappear in beats 2 and 3, I prefer to repeat B. At measure 10, the fundamental is precisely that note, so we have to write it in the third voice. Here we run into a problem. We need the D sharp because it's the leading tone here, but do we? If you look at the melody, D sharp is there, and the note in the next measure is an E. In fact, Beethoven writes what are known as intermittent octaves between the melody and the upper notes of the left hand. In my opinion, D sharp should not be written in any other voice. There's simply no way to avoid the intermittent octaves, and the progression of the melody will create the effect of the resolution of the leading tone, even with the F sharp in the middle. The next chord is also E minor. We could leap to the fundamental, but the chord in measure 12 is a dominant 7th chord in A, and we need that note, so I prefer to stay in B to be close to A. The chord in measure 13 is D. C sharp in voice 1 is just an appoggiatura. But D is missing in the first beat, so we leap to D in the third voice and repeat it on the third beat to match the rhythm with the other voices. The first 2 beats of measure 14 only have 3 voices, and it should be obvious that C sharp comes from D and not F sharp. This note should lead to E, but Beethoven has avoided it, probably not to anticipate the E in the melody on the last beat. Finally, in measures 15 and 16, we write 2 voices on the staff for voice 4. The C sharp in voice 2 is the leading tone here, so it should resolve to D and make a unison with voice 1. And there you have it. We've created a version of the music that is more consistent with voice leading rules. I'm not going to discuss all the other measures of the score. That would take too long. I'll only point out 3 special problems in those measures and how I recommend solving them. At measures 28 and 29, the upper notes of the left hand form octaves with the melody, so there are actually 2 voices. This is not a problem in piano music, because the instrument produces a lot of harmonics, but an orchestral version of this passage might sound a bit hollow. Therefore, I have created a third voice using notes from the harmony. This also solves the problem of 4 voices reappearing at measure 30. At measure 38, G sharp is the leading tone and should resolve to A at measure 39, but Beethoven doesn't follow this rule. The resolution is in fact carried out in another voice, the bass. Beethoven knows that none of this will be noticed, so he doesn't care about resolving the leading tone in another voice. However, it's not a good idea to do this in an orchestration, as it will be more noticeable. So first, I don't repeat the G sharp, following another rule in tonal harmony, and carry out the resolution in the proper way. This leads me to omit C sharp in the first beat, but that's not a problem, since that note will appear on the next beat on the melody. Finally, look at measures 41 and 42. Where does F sharp come from? Does it come from B in the previous measure? Or does it come from F? Well, another rule in tonal harmony is that chromatic movements must be kept within the same voice, so we cross voices 2 and 3 for a moment to make F sharp come from F. This perfectly illustrates one of my favorite tricks in orchestration. Forget what they told you in harmony lessons about not crossing voices. It's perfectly fine. That's all for now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. In the following video, I'll show you how easy it is to use this file to create an effective orchestration for string orchestra. Until then, take care. Ciao.